Hello and welcome to episode 3 of series 2 of our UKRG conversations. We are recording on Wednesday the 20th of May. I would like to introduce Dana Andrew, Executive Director of ICOM UK. Dana is an independent museum consultant and trainer specialising in touring exhibitions and international projects. She is part-time Executive Director of ICOM UK, the International Council of Museums, and Touring Exhibitions Group trainer and committee member. Prior to going freelance in 2014, Dana spent 14 years successfully delivering UK and international projects and exhibitions for the British Council Visual Arts Department, the Hayward Gallery, and the Victoria and Albert Museum, London. So if you're ready, I'll go straight ahead with the first question.
Great.
So with the ERC councils until 2022 at the moment, for example, what is the future of large-scale international gatherings?
Thanks, David. It's a really good question because we're starting to see more and more events moving online, and really to date, from what I've seen, they've been quite small gatherings, so limited number of participants and such like. But what we're seeing now is that AAM is going to run their annual conference meeting online this year, which I think they had one day on Monday for International Museum Day, and then I think the other dates are the 1st to the 4th of June. So it'll be really interesting to see how a large-scale conference, one of the biggest museum conferences in the world, translates or transfers to being online, and is it a model that other organisations are able to emulate? That is a paid-for conference, and I think there's some interesting kind of shifts at the moment between the amount of free content online versus perhaps having to move to more paid content online. Even, you know, organising an informal conversation like this, it does require people's time, technology, things like that. So certainly from what I've seen from what AAM are doing is that, you know, they've got some major partners on board to be able to deliver that on that kind of scale. So I'm not quite sure what the future is, but I think we're starting to see more mixed models. And at least I think when we're able to kind of have meetings in person again, I think there will be an expectation that there's kind of online elements, or that people will be able to access those kind of meetings remotely in some way.
Do you think at the same time as potential live events or slightly smaller scale live events?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Just specifically, is the ICOM ICEE 2020 conference still going ahead as planned in Mexico City?
Wow, it's still planning to go ahead as far as I understand. The ICEE committee are talking to their local partners in Mexico to find out what the latest situation is and monitor it. Obviously, future planning at the moment is somewhat difficult, especially as we see kind of some countries starting to open up sooner than others, seeing travel restrictions in place. And also kind of what kind of future funding organisations will have to host such conferences. So I think as far as I know, that they are making sure that whatever takes place, whether it's in person or virtual, it will be organised in a way that there's a suitable programme, suitable schedule, and that really it's protecting, kind of making sure the safety of all attendees, whether they're local or international, is guaranteed.
Thank you. What will we lose, do you think, if we do have to shelve such gatherings for the foreseeable future? Do you think good international working is dependent upon face-to-face contact, at least occasionally?
I mean, I do on one hand. On the other hand, you know, a recent example I learned about was Manchester Museum organising an exhibition with partners in India. It was done completely online. There was no travelling to and between, I think, except the Indian partners came over for the opening in Manchester. And Kat Lum, who managed that project, spoke about it at the 2020 Working Internationally conference. And she, you know, her point of view is like, if we can do this, many other organisations can do it. So I think we'll start to see more use of technology to enable these sorts of conversations. But I think, kind of pandemia aside, there's been growing questions about the need to be flying around the world, what you might call professional tourism or busman's holidays. You know, are the number of meetings really necessary? Kind of what's priority, and how can we do this more sustainably? Kind of, and that was even before all of the COVID-19 stuff kicked off. So while I think face-to-face meetings will always have a place to some extent, and there's definitely more, how do you say, more emphasis, or kind of those are more important in some countries and cultures than other. I think there's more willingness to do more things remotely now than ever.
People are speculating about the end of the International Blockbuster exhibition. Do you agree?
Oh, wow. I mean, casting my professional hat off for a moment, as a visitor, I'd love to go and see more exhibitions without having to shuffle along and crane over people's shoulders to look at things. So one part of me secretly hopes it is, in that sense. Professionally speaking, I think I don't think it will be the end of it, but I think there may be a bit of a pause, or we'll see it morph into something else, because it might be that we can finally move towards thinking about quality of experience and quality in terms of evaluation rather than just numbers through the doors. And I know a lot of organisations in the UK have perhaps already moved in that direction, but in some parts of the world it is literally how many people can get through the door is kind of how the funding is calculated and such like. So I think some of the things that are already planned will hopefully still take place, but then I wonder if we'll start to see a change in what a blockbuster is, what format it takes, what sorts of organisations can host and present such exhibitions. Because, well, as I'm sure we all know, kind of there's a lot of income generated from selling tickets from such things. So if there isn't the same budget available for projects, for ambitious exhibitions, what does that mean in terms of what people can present or mount? And what do we then think is a blockbuster? Is it more about the quality of information and what we can learn, rather than a big, over the top experience that has wowed us, but what do we take away from that? So I can only speculate, as everyone else can, but I hope it will mean a shift in thinking, perhaps.
We talked a little bit about it actually just before we started recording. Do you think then it needs to, do we need to engage then with funding bodies and with sponsor bodies in order to talk a little bit more about the quality of experience rather than visitor figures as a performance indicator?
Yeah, I think we do. And, certainly I think there are some funders and supporters who would really champion that sort of higher level of engagement versus number of visitors. But I'm not sure that's necessarily across the board. And as I said, kind of perhaps we might have already been moving in that direction in the UK. What does it mean for international blockbusters that have moved from country to country, where perhaps there is more need to really get those high numbers through the door? And that's a model that's been quite a traditional model for a very long time. The museum sector hasn't always been very quick to change and move, so maybe this will push things along a bit more than it has done to date.
I touched a little bit on this with Charlotte as well, but I mean, do you think that there is more room for growth in different models of partnership working, therefore, between institutions?
I think the only way things are going to happen going forward is in true partnerships. So rather than just saying we're looking for partners when really it's looking for venues for things, I think there's going to have to be new levels of partnership, really true collaboration, and finding new ways to make that happen between not only kind of organisation to organisation, but like you said, with potential supporters or patrons. How can everyone work together to make things happen, rather than maybe one organisation leading and kind of bringing others in at opportune moments, kind of really working together from the start to make a really meaningful collaborative project. And
so do you think this situation in reality is the situation that we're in right now? Do you think this will encourage a review of in-country networks? So a new relationship between institutions within the UK, for example?
I mean, there might be no choice. If international working is going to be more difficult in the short term to medium term, then naturally kind of national, regional and national working is going to be one way of continuing activity, continuing audience engagement. And again, there's been lots of organizations moving in this direction, but maybe it's going to strengthen some of those partnerships, enable different types of organizations to work together who might not have thought about it before. And certainly kind of seeing the sharing of collections, not just physical objects, but sharing collections, knowledge and expertise more widely. I really hope that's one of the short-term benefits that will carry on into the long term.
Thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Keep in touch. Make sure you keep looking at the website, at the Twitter feed, and at the e-bulletin. And until the next time, thanks very much.
Thank you.